Hello. If you have clicked on this video, I can only assume that you, in some way or form, resonate with the title. Maybe you are somebody who is a creative and you struggle sometimes to click publish. You're a bit nervous or apprehensive to put things out into the world, and I have definitely been there many times before, which is why I've made the video. And now, before I get into anything else, I just want to preface this is the first time I've tried using a wireless mic, and the sound engineering in this video is just, it's pretty shoddy. So please forgive the very loud cicada noises outside. It's a taste of Australian summer, so they might be a bit loud towards the end of the video. With that aside, what can you expect from this video? This video is going to be broken into two main parts. The first part is I'm going to share a bit about my own personal creative journey. The second part is I'm going to go through three main barriers I found to putting out, my creations out into the ether, and practical things that I implement today that I find to help a lot. So without further ado, let's get straight into the first part. A bit about myself and my own creative journey. I was one of those kids that grew up watching YouTube and having my favorite YouTubers and being like, oh my gosh, it'd be amazing to create my own YouTube videos one day. And I used to also read blogs and be like, oh my gosh, it'd be cool if I could be a blogger one day. It was always like one day, and I would brainstorm and write down in my journal like so many ideas, to the extent that I would write out full-on storyboards and scripts and actually film the videos and just never execute. 2025 was the year where I decided, okay, I'm actually going to show up for myself, because it is something that I have constantly come back to and recognize that it is important for myself. So I set myself the goal of 20 YouTube videos, 20 blog posts, and 20 illustrations, all of which need to be posted on the existing platforms that I have. So for me, that's Instagram, YouTube, and a Substack blog that I have. That's a bit about me. So now let's dive into the next part of the video, which is talking about three of the key barriers that I faced in creating and publishing, and practical things I've found to really help. Here are the three. The first is cringing at everything that I create, i.e. the very strong self-critic. The second is the pressure that everything needs to be part of a cohesive personal brand. And then the third is this pressure around that everything needs to be monetized. So talk about each of these three things in turn. Number one, this first barrier, that everything I make is cringe. Here's some context. When I first started putting content out there, for me, the first mediums were, Instagram Reels, blog posts, and I made a single YouTube video back in 2023. I found it so hard to put something out there because as soon as I would finish it, as soon as I was about to click publish, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so cringe. I can't put this out there. I'm exposing myself too much. So what have I done to help address this? The first thing is to really understand where the feeling is coming from. This is my body having a fight or flight response, this feeling of anxiety, this feeling of dread, this feeling of fear of being judged or perceived in a negative way. Recognizing where that's coming from, recognizing it definitely came from a place where I probably cared a bit too much about how others perceived me. The first time I ever published something on YouTube, on Substack, on Instagram, it was very scary, but it did get easier. it got so much easier by the second, third, fourth or fifth time. Another thing that I found that helped is to acknowledge that we often are our worst self-critic, and we're so much more harsh on our own work than we are on someone else's. For a while I found it really hard to look back and read the stuff or watch the stuff that I had put out there because I was just cringing. But one thing I found to help rewire my brain in a more positive way is that I would read it or watch it and pretend that I was watching a friend's content. And as I was watching it or reading it, to point out one or two things that I found to be really cool or really positive, like, oh, I really liked that transition, or oh, I really like that anecdote. We often don't look at our own work objectively. We are often so myopic about how am I being perceived, how I'm being perceived, versus just objectively looking at it as a creation which you've put out there to the world. In short, to this whole idea of everything I make is cringe, I want you to take stock of, acknowledge the feeling, understand where it's coming from, and be kind to yourself when you do feel these feelings of apprehension or fear. They're completely normal and it does get better over time. And the second thing is to look at your work as you would a friend's work, and to try and point out the positive things about it and make those the things that you focus on. All right, so the second barrier, this pressure that everything needs to be consistent and on brand and part of this one beautiful personal image. Where I'm coming from here is that, you know, when you look at a lot of the successful creators out there, they have a certain aesthetic. They're known for a certain style, like they might be very cinematic, they might have certain styles of vlogs, they're just known for something. When I first started putting stuff out there, I felt this pressure that unless I already knew what my personal brand or personal style was, I couldn't just put stuff out there. And I realized now that, you know, when I'm first starting out, when anyone is first starting out, you really are just trying to find your feet. It takes a process of experimentation to get to a point where you can begin to refine. Some of the stuff that you create at first is just really shit, and that's okay. The point is not to have perfect things that are on brand or consistent at the start. It's just put stuff out there and see what resonates with yourself and see what resonates with your audience. And so what have been some of the practical ways that I've gotten over this feeling that, oh, everything needs to be perfect and consistent and on brand? The first thing is that I've looked at some of my favorite creators and I've scrolled down to the bottom of their blog feeds or their Instagram feeds or their YouTube feeds, and some of their beginning stuff, it's like nothing to do with the stuff that they make now. The style's completely different. They were just experimenting. And that gave me comfort that this is just part of the process. Part of the process is just putting stuff out there and finding your feet, and it does not have to be perfect or consistent in any way. And the second thing I found to really help is to focus on skill development and having fun with it. For example, with YouTube videos, because I am a bit of a perfectionist, rather than trying to say, oh, I really want to make something I'm really proud of every time I publish, instead I'm like, okay, I'm just going to focus on experimenting and having fun with a different style. So for example, this is like, I'm using a wireless mic for the first time, and I don't know, I'm trying this format of just like talking on my bed with you. So if you are a perfectionist like me, focusing on actually having a tangible outcome, like I'm going to use this software, or I'm going to practice doing this style, or I'm going to practice this type of shot, or, you know, music transition, or blah, 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 blah. It gives my brain something to hold on to and be like, yes, this is something I could like tick off and be like, okay, I've done what I wanted to do with this video. In conclusion, in terms of addressing this pressure of everything needs to be consistent or on brand, two things. Number one, look at your favorite creators and just scroll all the way down and just realize that experimentation is part of the process. And number two, rather than focusing on perfection or something intangible that's out of your control, Focus on a tangible skill or an outcome that you can get from every output. Final barrier, let's talk about this pressure that everything needs to be monetized. I recognize that now we live in a world where anything that you do can technically become your side hustle / become your full-time job. That is the beauty of the internet, that is the beauty of social media. There are so many people that have made YouTube or blog writing or podcasting their full-time job, and that's an amazing thing. What I think I noticed for myself is that this subconscious thought that, oh, maybe I can monetize this and make it my full-time job one day, was actually preventing me from just having fun and doing something that I just really enjoyed. If I take journaling, for example, and writing, I can sit in a cafe for literally 3 or 4 hours and be so content and just write and write and write and write and write, because I have so many thoughts inside my head and I'm just having fun inside my own brain. I just love, bringing together ideas and imagining how they could play out. I'm going to continue doing it for the rest of my life because I enjoy it and I can't not do it. And the second thing that I have gained a lot of comfort in is realizing that it's fine to just create for yourself. I really have struggled with this over the years, where I always felt like putting my time into something needed to lead to some tangible outcome, needed to prove something to the world, needed to prove my worth in some way. Now that I've had that reckoning that I just really enjoy creating, that it's fine for me to just create selfish art that not other people resonate with. In summary, the two things I found helpful in regards to this pressure around monetizing your side hustle. The first is to revisit your why, to really be honest with yourself about why creating is important to you, and to remind yourself of that constantly. And the second is to remind yourself that it's okay to make selfish art, that the things that you put out into the world don't necessarily have to resonate with your audience at a core level. It's enough simply by being something that you find interesting. I think that brings us to the end of the video. And if you've made it this far, thank you. How would I like to end? I'd like to end with this. Creating is about showing up for yourself and not for anyone else. And this is the most important thing I'd like to leave you with. If the next time you find yourself hesitating or being scared of clicking publish or being vulnerable, to remind yourself that those feelings are completely normal and that it does get easier over time. I wish you the best on your creative journeys, and I will see you next time.